Say that again, Bob.
Proposed rate increase, Heber Light Power. What is being proposed? This is the outline of this thing today. This is what it says I'm supposed to do as an outline. It says, what is the effect of the proposed rate? Is the proposed rate needed? Are there any alternatives to raising the rate? So that's what we're going to go briefly over today. Oops, then we're going to have conclusions. Okay, here's an overview of how we got to where we are now. And this will be a quick overview. The previous board passed a 2014 budget. They passed an impact fee. The budget didn't quite have enough money to balance, so they hired a consultant to do a cost study and a proposed rate to fulfill the budget. Because if you have a budget, you have to have enough money or else you can't have the budget. So they hired a consultant to do that. He listed it in the study. It's called the Pender Cost Study. Pender Cost Study. How many people attended the public hearing on this? Several did. He spent about 45 minutes explaining how he got to where he wanted to be, or where they wanted to be, or whatever he did for his cost study. Here are the three criteria that he cited in there. One, we have to meet the required revenues. Always good. If you're going to spend money, you need to have the money. Number two, we have to take into consideration cost causation. In other words, what caused things to go up, and figure out what caused it, and then we can figure out what that costed and figure out who has to pay for it and how it can be offset. And number three, it needs to be fair and equitable rates for everybody. Okay, long-term goal. This is from the Heber Light Power mission statement. Their mission statement says they want to be recognized leader in public power industry by providing outstanding customer value and reliable service. Now, I don't know if they are a recognized leader. I do know they have reliable service. I know that the lights are on. They're generally on. We had a power outage the other day. Had it fixed in a very short period of time. They're very reliable. Do a great job. The power is there. That's good. That's what they're there for. However, today we're going to focus on the other portion there of outstanding customer value. Each of you probably have an idea of what outstanding customer value is. Probably something along the lines, are we getting our money's worth? Are we paying too much? That would be customer value to me. You know, how much is it costing us? Okay, little history that might suggest that we want to use a little bit of caution. And this is based on a few things that have happened just recently in Heber Light Power over the last couple of years, really. Number one is one of my favorites. I call it the full health pay. The fake health pay that the board of directors did a couple of years ago, that they got called on the carpet for after, let me see, who was it that got that whole thing started? Oh, it was we the people that brought it up. And we went to various different people and said, hey, we got a problem here. This is not correct. You guys can't get health care. You can't just raise your salaries like this. And we got a few people from the state behind us, and sooner or later they came up with a response that says, as a result of the follow-up to the state auditor's office report on the citizens filed complaint, the AG's office has issued a letter on the fake health pay asking HL&P board members to return the funds at once. And lo and behold, we believe that almost all of the funds have been returned. That's $40,000 that was returned to the Heber Light Power, thanks to activists who actually stood up and said something and said, we don't like this, it's not right, we got it done. Second thing we're going to talk about, just briefly, and that's the furnace scandal. Now has anybody not heard about the furnace scandal? Okay, everybody's heard about it. So we'll just give you this one little highlight of something that just came out of Canadian broadcasting, television, radio, and news reports. Anthony Furness, former Vice President of Finance at St. John Energy, this is in New Brunswick, Canada, was charged with fraud in 2006. Sergeant Jay Henderson of the St. John Police Force confirmed on Tuesday, he confirmed that. Anthony Furness is facing fraud-related charges in both St. John and Utah related to the utilities he worked for. But before his provincial court hearing, Furness fled to the United States, said Henderson. So here we have a gentleman who was a financial officer in a power utility in New Brunswick, Canada in 2006. He fled the country, and just about that same year, he ends up being hired at Heber Light Power to be the chief financial officer. Now this is just a couple little things that make people wonder, should we just give them carte blanche? Should we just say, oh, you want a rate increase? Yeah, we'll give you a rate increase because you're good, your power's on. Okay, here is what the management said. And a lot of this was credit card fraud, that he was charging things for his own card. In the audit that the Heber Light Power does for the state auditor's office, they put in a 2-page letter at the beginning. Here is one of the statements that they made in there. This is from the Heber Light Power management. We acknowledge our responsibility for the design, implementation, and maintenance of internal control to prevent and detect fraud. So basically, they said, gee, we screwed up. And we said, yeah, we screwed up. A couple of things suggesting a little bit of caution. Okay, what will this rate increase do? Now, you've all been told, or you've heard, this is a 4.5% rate increase. Across the board, everybody gets 4.5%, right? What you heard. Okay, the percentage cost increase for residential, everybody gets 4.5%. 9,600 residential customers get across the board 4.5%. Whether you're the little guy, the big guy, whatever, 4.5%. Second category they have is small commercial. If you are below an average user, which they say was, I think, 3,600 kilowatt hours, your percentage increase is up much more than 4.5%. That is partly due to the institution of a service charge, that I'll get to here in just a second. Okay, continuing on. For small commercial, you are above the average. In other words, if you use more electricity, your percentage increase goes down. So anybody above 3,600, above the 4.5% that they put out in their averages, if you use more than that, your percentage will go down until you're up to a really bigger user. It's about the same, or it's much of a change at all. So what happens in the kilowatt hour cost? That's how much you pay for the electricity you're using. For residential, if you go over 1,000 kilowatt hours, which is, I guess that's high average. I don't get anywhere near that. But after you get to 1,000, as a residential version, your rate goes up per kilowatt hour. So you use more, you have to pay more per kilowatt hour. Trying to get you to conserve, maybe. Okay, for small commercial, over 1,000 kilowatt hours, the rate goes down. Okay, maybe we're trying to help out the small businessman. Maybe it's a good idea. It's a decision made by the board of directors. We'll get to the other category here in just a minute. Service charges. 3 years ago, Heber Light Power instituted what was called a residential service charge. They said they needed it because that's how they're going to pay for the infrastructure. They had too many people that shut off their electricity in the summer and they went away and they didn't pay, so they instituted a service charge of $12 a month. That raised about $120,000 a year, so we've got approximately 10,000 residents, or 10,000 ratepayers, which coincidentally, it is coincidence, obviously, it was about the same amount of money that the health pay was going to cost for the board, but that had nothing to do with that, I'm sure. But that's the money, and it is still there. Not only is it still there, but they're going to raise it by 4.5% to $12.54. Okay, service charges, by their very nature, hurt most the people who use lease. They get the higher percentage rate because of the service charge. Service charges are basically, if they were taxes, they'd be called a regressive tax. They're not good for the little people. And by putting this in, Heber Light Power is very proud in boasting that they have the lowest rates in the state. They mentioned this again at the public hearing. They say it's 7.5 cents per kilowatt hour. But if anybody runs a little analysis on their home bill, you'll find out it's probably closer to 9.5 cents, depending on how much you're using. But by having a service charge, they can say, oh, well, that's not the electrical charge, that's a service charge. So anyway, it raises quite a bit of money. Okay, the charge is also increasing by that 4.5%, and they're also going to institute a new service charge for the small commercial users. And who's going to be affected most by that? But the small commercial users, the ones that don't use much electricity, but they are going to get a bigger percentage, as I mentioned before. Okay, in the Pender study, a report of other utilities and service charge was shown in his study. They had about, I had the numbers, but I didn't break them down for it. We were one of the higher ones. Some people had 5, some didn't have any. One was 12, one was a little higher. But we're up in the high, and we're still going to raise it even more. Personally, I think they ought to do away with it. Okay, large commercial. Now, large commercial is the big users of electricity. This is where this whole thing gets interesting. Can you hold the, yeah, go ahead, if it's a quick question.
Yeah, if you have 2,000, if you have 120,000